Will the Oklahoma Sooners play spoiler in the SEC?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers tuning in, subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm John Williams, he's Jay Smith, and Greg McElroy, former Alabama Crimson Tide quarterback, former South Lake Carroll Dragon from North Texas football fame, has had a lot of takes about the Oklahoma Sooners recently as OU gets ready to enter the SEC. Well, he devised a tier structure and had Oklahoma in tier 3 in his kind of preseason power rankings. But he does believe that the Oklahoma Sooners have a chance to play spoiler in the SEC. Now, we've spoken on this show recently about how Oklahoma has a chance to go in and make some big time noise. Well, McElroy is not necessarily as high on the Sooners as we are. And, you know, for good reason. We're Oklahoma fans. We're going to be a little bit higher on people other than, Alabama fans. That's okay. But Greg McElroy did say this about Oklahoma's defense that should have everybody pretty excited about where they're heading this year. He says, defensively, they got a real chance to be a top 10 defense. Yeah, you lose a couple guys in the trenches. You lose a few there, but you bring in a couple too from the portal that you feel pretty good about. And you look at the second level, their linebackers are going to be rock solid. And those guys are all back. Everyone's back in the secondary. Sure, there's questions about offense, but defense, you're locked and loaded, Jay.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing that he jumped out to me with that comment is that we're going into a conference where the focus has always been the defense, right? And now we're walking in and people will think we're going to have a top 10 defense. So it made it interesting to me that he put Oklahoma in that third tier, mainly because I don't see why Oklahoma would be, well, he said the top team in the third tier, right? But I don't understand why Oklahoma will be ranked so low if the anticipation is having a top 10 defense in a conference that's infamous about having and focusing on defense, right? That's the one thing that if you think about the SEC is you think about all those teams having defenses that become spoilers and really, really tough to get through offensively. I mean, look at some of the other offenses in the conference. Now, you've got innovative offensive minds in there now, but the name of the game is stopping the other team. And if your defense is rock solid enough to shut down the opposing team, I don't see how you would not be at least tier 2. The spoiler piece, it's interesting, but I don't see why we would be considered so much of a spoiler when if we're walking in with a top 10 defense, we'll be one of the top ones in the conference.
And he talks about, the offensive line issue, the inexperience of Jackson Arnold. But really, to me, that's not going to be as much of an issue as everybody expects it to be. The offensive line is going to come together. Jackson Arnold is going to remind everybody why he was the Gatorade National Player of the Year, the Elite 11 MVP, a 5-star quarterback. So really what we're talking about is all you're looking at is just the question marks. Again, you said it multiple times. They're questions, not concerns. We don't have concerns about the offensive line. We just got to see it come together, and it's got the talent to do so. So as we look at this team, and the defense is really what's going to help carry this thing in the early going, because you don't have to rely on Jackson Arnold to go throw for 404 touchdowns every single game. You don't have to rely on your offense to go score 45 points every single game. No, you've got a defense now that can keep you in ball games, even if you're an inexperienced quarterback or you're not quite put together offensive line aren't quite there yet.
Yeah, and that's the funny part. And so he talked about with the offensive side that, the offensive line, right? We've all talked about the questions on that. We won't beat that dead horse right now. But he talked about the skills guys. And he pointed out that, losing, Drake Stoops and replacing him with a new wide receiver in Deion Burks. I love Drake Stoops. Deion Burks is a better athlete, right? Mm-hmm. We know that once you get it and Jackson Arnold just winds it up and launches it, Deion's probably going to be open deep, especially when you look at the other wide receivers in the room with Nick Anderson, who had 10 touchdowns last season. It became a major threat. Jalil Farouk, when healthy, he's still a threat, even, beyond the fumbling situations. He's a threat, and teams have to focus on him. When Andrew Anthony gets back healthy, he's going to be ridiculous. And Jaden Gibson's ready to burst out. Brennan Thompson is a home runner, right? So the skills position thing to me is what's going to be the saving grace for what Jackson Arnold's going to do next season. He's surrounded by a bunch of veterans. The running back room is still veterans. The wide receiver room is veterans. We got a new tight end, which we'll see what that looks like, but the main positions that he's going to need outside of offensive line to keep him calm and ready to go, he's got it. So I don't see how those questions keep bubbling up. To me, I'm going to put it this way to you, John. Hearing all of these takes from a lot of these more so major talking heads, I feel like they're starting to hedge their bets. And I say that because initially everyone was saying that Oklahoma, they're going to run into the SEC and figure out what it's like. Now everyone's throwing rat poison out there. I feel like they're all hedging their bets based upon what they said initially without really doing the research about this team. And they're trying to prepare themselves that if Oklahoma ends up good, see, I told you they could be spoilers. We told you they were going to be the team that's going to spoil everybody. That's what I'm seeing right now, John, and I hate it.
We're kind of at that point, as fall camp gets going. Now Oklahoma's all of a sudden a sleeper playoff team, Kirk Herbstreit, a spoiler per Greg McElroy, a team on the rise per, Paul Feinbaum. It's kind of funny. And yet we're still getting the Texas hype. That's going to continue on. But I mean, Oklahoma's at this place where now it's just a matter of going and proving who they are on the field. And they're a really good team. And I know everybody's looking at that offensive line and thinking it's not quite where it needs to be. But with the freshman All-American and Fabechi Wiwu, with a really, really experienced center in Branson Hickman, who I think could be an upgrade over what you had last year, with 4-star offensive tackles and Jacob Sexton, Jake Taylor. I mean, I don't think it's going to be near as bad as what everybody expects it to be. I think it's going to be pretty good. And you mentioned the skill position players. You've got a number of guys that are going to be able to get open down the field, or they're going to be able to take a short pass and have a chance to break it for a big gain. So the pressure is not all on Jackson Arnold, which how long has it been since we've had a quarterback situation that they're not carrying the weight of the world like Atlas on their shoulders? No, like it's been forever since we've been sitting here asking the quarterback to go, you got to go score 40 points or we don't have a chance. No, you're going to have a chance if your quarterback doesn't score 30 points in a game. You're actually going to have a chance to win that football game because of the way that Brent Venables and his staff has built the roster.
Yeah, it seems like if your quarterback goes and gets 40 points, you're probably blowing out the competition. And because even with the SEC, as fast as the game can go sometimes, they still move really at a snail's pace. It's because of that defense, right? This is now a much higher level of chess. You're going up against some of the best defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators in the game, some of the best minds in college football. So because of that, you got to be a little bit more meticulous. Then you throw in the technology aspect to it. I promise you, this is the one thing that's going to be interesting going into next season that I'm ready to see. When teams get out there at that 15-second mark and the headset turns off, when they all start changing their plays on each other, that's what's going to be interesting because you're going to see it, right? And I say that because that was how the Patriots won that Super Bowl against the Rams when it was 13-3. It was probably one of the worst, but the best, depending on if you're a big defensive guy. They knew that Jared Goff, back at that point in his career, was not the quarterback of the LA Rams. They knew the quarterback was Sean McVay. He was calling the plays, reading the defenses, and telling Goff what to do. So as soon as that 15-second mark hit and those headsets were turned off, the Patriots changed their whole defense. And Goff was trying to figure it out. Like, okay, now what do I do now? What do I do now? What do I do now? And it's no fault of him. It's just that was the masterful play of a Bill Belichick. We're going to start seeing those chess plays here in the SEC, especially because the defense is such a focus. You'll see it in the Big Ten as well, but the defense is such focused here with these exceptional offenses. Those adjustments are going to be ridiculous. I'm pretty excited to see what that looks like.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see how quickly Oklahoma plays on offense, because under Jeff Lebby, it was like a rapid pace. Will they keep that same kind of mentality under Seth Luttrell? I believe they will, but I'll be excited to see kind of what the differences are in his offensive philosophy versus Jeff Lebby. The Oklahoma Sooners are kind of highly looked upon in the JP poll. Josh Pate puts out his power ratings, not rankings, ratings. We'll discuss those coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
Y'all know me. I love sports. Love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as playoffs are winding down, we're going into the Olympics. We're getting fewer games. And the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel is letting me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app, dream up the bets anytime I'm in the mood. Best part about that is right now, baseball, you've got a pretty big matchup with the Dodgers and Padres. Shohei Ohtani is doing what he does best. So you could jump on a prop bet. You could jump on the game, which is minus 42 going in on for Tuesday night. Or if you're feeling really froggy, you can start looking at Oklahoma games, right? You start looking at the Temple game where Oklahoma walks in at a 42.5-point favorite against Temple Owls to open the season. Whatever it is, whatever you dream up, you can do. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. So there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/locked on and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN all day on your TV? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you canvas analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app or on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the JP poll, it's the most controversial poll in college football. I think, because he's got his own numerical analytical rating system that he's come up with that defines who the top teams are in college football week to week. And the Oklahoma Sooners sit pretty solidly right there at number 12 in the JP poll, which is pretty solid. I think that's probably about where they're going to land in the AP when it comes out in the USA Today coaches poll. But what's surprising here is they're the 5th highest ranked SEC team behind Georgia, Texas, Bama, Ole Miss, and LSU. I mean, they're sitting in front of Aggie, Vols, Mizzou. So JP Poll's power rating system really likes the Oklahoma Sooners going into 2024.
Yeah, my favorite thing about his ratings, not rankings, is that a lot of people don't truly understand how it works, right? His whole point and purpose of this is that if the spreads were dropped today, based upon the information we have right now, that Oklahoma will be favored at about there'll be only 11 teams that will be favored against Oklahoma in a neutral site game. So as of right now, like I said, in the SEC, LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas, and Georgia would all be favorites. Not sure how big of a favorite, but they would be favored going into said game because that's just kind of how ratings work. And then if you go non-con, you've got Michigan, Florida State, Notre Dame, Penn State, right? Oregon and Ohio State that would all be considered favorites in a game going into that. And that's just going off information today. We still got to see what the teams look like fall camp. Still got to see what they look like going into the first game of the season and how they actually perform. So it makes sense to put Oklahoma there. I think what intrigued me the most is that we're ahead of Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Missouri, right? Because everybody was super high on Missouri because of how favorable their schedule is. But going into a game, it sounds like what JP's saying is if there's a neutral site game set for that game, there's no way Missouri's going to be favored over Oklahoma. And there's a good chance they'd be probably a couple, they could be a good field goal to a touchdown dogs in that game. That's going to make a lot of other teams mad hearing that, right? It's like, how are they going to be favored against us? And it's typically because I know he takes in consideration also that blue chip ratio, which we talked about before. That's critical. How much talent do you have? And then on top of the talent, how much are you going to execute on? That's where A&M drops, is because you got to execute on it. You can't have all that talent and not execute. Texas finally executed one time. So we've got to see if they can do it again with their ratio. But as of right now, it makes sense. I like Oklahoma in that 10 to 15 range on every single ratings and rankings because it gives Oklahoma an opportunity to prove themselves without getting too much of a quote unquote bias. I'm here for it.
Yeah, it seems like you look at a Tennessee game. If they were favored on a neutral field, according to Josh Pate, we're looking at probably Oklahoma's going to be favored in that game when Tennessee comes to town.
Mm-hmm.
You think about Oklahoma going on the road to face Missouri. I mean, there's a good chance that Oklahoma could be a favorite in that game, depending on how the two seasons are going on. But even if Oklahoma maybe has more losses on their schedule, by the time they get to Columbia, there's still a decent chance that Oklahoma could be a favorite because Missouri's schedule is very favorable. I said it a few weeks ago out on Twitter. I said if Missouri doesn't win 10 games, it is a deplorable season for them because their schedule is so good. The non-conference is great. The conference schedule is phenomenal. They probably got the best conference schedule of anybody in the SEC. So this is going to be a very, very fascinating year. Any other surprises on there? You don't see any Big 12 teams until you get to number 16 with Kansas State.
Yeah, they kind of lead up. They got 16, 17, and you go down to 23 and 25. Iowa State being up there in the top 25 of his ratings is very interesting. And I say that because Iowa State's one of the top teams in the country in returning production. And I think that's a recipe for success for Matt Campbell. That's something that he has always thrived in. The seasons where he brings back a bunch of his talent from the year before or production, he's very much successful. It's those seasons where he's depleted because he's got so much production coming back and they all leave at one time. That's when you kind of see them fall down. But they always find a way to bounce back unless they decide to start gambling, which is really what ruins every year. But Florida at 21, that has ruffled a lot of feathers inside of the comments or the mentions and comments inside of that tweet because people are like, oh, Florida, there's no way Florida's going to be. No, Florida and Miami both have the rosters to be favored in a lot of games this year. They just play like Florida plays a very hard schedule, but against other conferences, yes, they're going to be favored in majority of those games. That's the thing that you have to look at when it comes to this. Georgia's the only one on here that makes sense, really, honestly, in the top 5 at being number 1. I don't think Texas should be that high. I think Texas should probably be around 6, right? But I don't know who you move around up. That's kind of where I'm struggling with because figuring out which teams would be favored on neutral sites. I don't even think I'd see Penn State being favored over Oklahoma in a neutral site game mid-season. Preseason, I get it. Mid-season, this is going to change a lot over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, and I have a good sinking suspicion that Oklahoma is going to rise in this ranking or rating, I should say, over the next couple of months as we get into the heart of the season. We got Hot Take Tuesday coming at you. Our insiders from the Locked On Sooners Insider Program dropped their takes. We're going to react to what they had to say coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do these have in common? You're probably buying a ton again this summer. But don't stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all of your purchase when you stock up on all of your summer essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn hundreds on items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, several trips to the gas pump, or the fancy dinner that you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy. It's your time to join over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Today's episode of Locked On Sooners is also brought to you by Factor. If you're trying to figure out how to manage all of the schedules, all of the meal planning, you got to go check out Factor. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you're always having the time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleanup. Enjoy that effortless lifestyle that you need when you got all things going on, all the schedules that you're trying to maintain. Choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. So head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 and use code lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code lockedoncollege50 at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while the subscription is active over at Factor. All right, so our members over at the Locked On Sooners Insider Program, which you can be a part of if you just text the word SEC 2024 to 405-817-6711. I'm going to put that number up here on the screen for you. That's SEC 2024 to 405-817-6711. You also get 25% off your first month, in addition to 14 free days to be a part of the Locked On Sooners Insider Program. Ask the question to our insiders. What are you looking forward to with fall camp opening up this week? What position battles? Which players are you expecting to see break out this year? Steve from the 918, speaking of breakout players, had this to say. He believes that Jaden Gibson on offense, Caden Woolard on defense are going to be his breakout picks.
That's interesting because I'm in the same camp. I've been buying a lot of Jaden Gibson's stock over the last few weeks because it's an opportunity for him now, right? You know, we saw Jalil Farouk kind of in like a boot, and Brent Venables mentioned that, you know, he should be ready, you know, right around fall camp. Andrew Anthony should be ready about the beginning of the season. That's 2 key wide receivers. It's going to open up the opportunity for the competition at the wide receiver room. And Gibson was stepping out last season. You saw him breaking out and moving forward. So I sense it's going to be like, all right, let's go ahead and give you a chance. You've got 3 games to really show us what you got. And then once we go up against Tennessee, then we'll know who's going to be ready to play. So keep this in mind. When it comes to the first 3 games of the season, don't expect that to be the locked in, complete, 100% depth chart. That's going to change come Tennessee. Those first 3 games are going to be an opportunity to see what we got and see what we're working with. And I think that Gibson's going to be definitely taking advantage of that. And I've also bought all of the Caden Woolard stock, so I apologize. There's no more available. Exactly. I think he's going to potentially be an All-American, right? I mean, you come in with 13.5 sacks. John, there's a great chance that he could walk in and do the damage similar to what a Jared Verse did at Florida State. We can't sleep on the fact that this dude was able to be a terrorist back in his day at Miami of Ohio. If he could translate that here, hey, man, I'm just saying. Jared Verse made himself a first-round pick. I think Kate Woolard can do something similar.
Yeah, Buffalo to Florida State, Miami of Ohio to Oklahoma. Here's hoping, man. I mean, if he can take that step and be that kind of a difference maker, that really changes everything for Oklahoma's defense, and it provides them a legit pass rusher on one side of the ball. With Jaden Gibson, I mean, dude, it's just now his time. Now's his time to go and take advantage of the opportunity that is there before him. I've been so impressed with this kid, you know, after his true freshman season in 2022, where it just didn't click for him. He had a couple drops, had a drop in the spring game the following offseason. And then in 2023, just took advantage of opportunities and made plays and made it with that mindset that you love to see out of a wide receiver one. he's got that mentality that's like, just throw me the ball, no matter where it's at, who it's against. I'm going to go get it, and I'm going to drag him to the end zone, TCU, along the way. So looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Richard from the 405 says he's looking forward to seeing how the defensive line and the edges come together. He's hoping they will be able to stop the quarterback fast, even if opposing offensive line units use max protect like they did last year.
Now, that one's intriguing there, right? If as he mentioned, if we see less max protect, which we will be going into SEC play where teams they're a little more inflated about themselves. They feel like their lines can handle our guys. So yeah, they're gonna let it. But if we go out there and be as disruptive as we're expecting in these first 3 games, that's the question I want to ask everybody, right? How many points do you think we're going to give up in the first 3 games? If we can go out there and have an absurd ratio of points to defensive points to start the season, we may actually see that max protect come back, right? Teams that inflated ego may start to drop, be like, whoa, we may actually need to pay attention to them. We didn't realize they were going to be this good, even though we've been preaching it this entire time. We've been telling y'all the one thing that jumps out the most about this team is the defense. And that defensive line of edges, I agree. That's going to be one that's going to be tough. And look, if you find a way to get Danny Okoye out there who runs a 4.5 40 at 260 pounds, them fast quarterbacks are going to struggle getting away from him. And that's what you want. You want dudes out there that's going to be that disruptive. And yeah, I like that take.
Yeah, it's a big take, and it's an important part of what Oklahoma needs to do this year is generate consistent pass rush. If you get it up the middle from Dominic Williams, Dejon Terry, David Stone, Jaden Jackson, Grayson Halton, Davin Sears, if you can get it up the middle, those guys off the edge are going to eat. Ethan Downs, Caden Woolard, R. Mason Thomas, Adeboja Adebaware, Trace Ford, Danny Okoye, those dudes will feast if the quarterback doesn't really have any room to go up the middle. And I mean, we're going to see it against Tennessee. Like, is this pass rush improved? If they can contain a guy like Nico Iamaleava, who is a very good runner, that will tell us what this defensive front is going to be looking like for the rest of the year, because they're not going to face an athletic quarterback like that every single week, but they will face several. Jalen Milroe in Alabama, Nico, obviously that week. That might actually be about it. Jackson Dart can run a little bit. He's a pretty good runner.
He can scoot. Yeah,
he can scoot a little bit. So it'll be a good test that first week of SEC play against Nico. Final take here comes from Lamont out of the 3-2-3. He says he's looking forward to seeing how they divvy up those linebacker snaps. I trust the staff to devise a rotation that enables players like Lewis Carter, Jaron Canick, Kobe McKenzie, Deshaun McCullough, and Sam Omasigo to thrive, contribute, and complement Stutzman and Kip Lewis.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because as we know, we mentioned this before, and I talked about it a few times, that Phil Steele has this linebacker group as the second best in the country, period, like all of them. So everyone's high on these linebackers, and I see why, right? You bring in Stutzman, who, of course, is the floor general, but everyone behind him have shown that they can play, right? We saw Kip do some crazy stuff at like 210 pounds against Texas, right? We said Texas, the offensive line, and their guy's so big. No, he's going in the backfield, launching himself, knocking people down. Deshaun McCullough was holding up defensive tackles over 300 pounds and stopping runs back-to-back times, right? That 1 yard line goal stance was massive, and McCullough was in the middle of that. And then you still got the big guys of a Kobe McKenzie and Samuel Mosigo and Jaron Canick, especially because Kobe McKenzie's bigger than Kenneth Murray was when he was here. So that's a very good one, because I'm very intrigued to see which pairs does he put out there together, right? Because he's going to have to pair certain dudes with others. And I sense that we'll probably see a good 3 deep rotation on a regular basis. I'm wondering if we see less than 400 snaps for each one of them. I'm wondering if we only see maybe 300-ish to 250 to 300-ish for each linebacker, because, yeah, we've got a lot that actually can play.
Yeah, I mean, I figure you see Danny Stutzman play 500-600 snaps just because he's Danny Stutzman. You don't want to take him off the field.
Fair.
But after that, I mean, you've got 4 stars in Lewis Carter and Jaron Kanik and, Kobe McKenzie and Samuel Omasigo. Dasan McCullough was a dude that was very highly thought of coming out of Indiana, coming out of high school. I think he was even a 4-star coming out of high school and going to Indiana. Kip Lewis was a 4-star prospect in his own right too. So it's a blue chip group, and they've got this incredible amount of talent and this incredible depth. And I think you could see, in certain matchups, them go with a bigger group, a bigger duo, like Danny Stutzman and Kobe McKenzie paired up as their, inside linebackers. Or you might want to get a little bit more athletic, and you'll see some, Kip Lewis and Jaron Kanik combos at times, just to get that speed and athleticism on the field in certain situations. So it's going to be really, really fascinating to see how Zach Alley and Brent Venables deploy this linebacker group, because it's so talented. It's so talented. And you want to start getting these guys ramped up, because Stutzman is gone after this year. Depending on the kind of season that Jaron Kanik has, I mean, if he has this, bounce back, resurgent kind of season, he could potentially be gone to the NFL after this year. So you got to start getting guys like, Samuel Omasigo and Lewis Carter ready to go and ready to contribute in 2025. They'll be contributors this year, but I mean, they're going to be asked to do a whole lot more coming up next year. If you want to be a part of Hot Take Tuesday or be a part of our mailbag segment on Fridays, make sure you're subscribed to the Locked On Sooners Insider Program by texting SEC 2024 or Sooners to 405-817-6711. You can get 14 days free, plus you can get 25% off your first month, again, by texting SEC 2024 to 405-817-6711 to get 25% off your first month. Follow Jay on Twitter at Unfair Sports, myself at John 9 Williams. The show on all the socials is at Locked On Sooners. Go check it out. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We appreciate your time and the amount of interaction you give us, both in the YouTube comments and on the social media front as well. For your next listen, go check out the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. So make that your second listen of the day. He brings you discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I love Spencer's work. He's doing a phenomenal job with the Locked On College Football Podcast. So go check it out. Subscribe to that show wherever you get your podcast. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll catch you then. Boomer
Sooner.